Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Season 3 premiere of Rocket Lasso Live. We've got people showing up already on Twitch, already on YouTube. Can everybody tell me if the picture, the video, the audio, if everything is coming through nice and clear? Hopefully it is. It seems to be good on my end, but it's hard to tell. So who do we got hanging out? Mr. Mad Dog, Alver, V. Ruckus, MW, Tobias, Jake, Eric, Zach, David, Arpan, Munthies, I think another Jake. I think there's a Jack and a Jake. Motion Trash, welcome. Typo, Real Pixel, Stumich, Level Bevel. Man, we got so many people. Look at all these names. So many people coming to say hello. I can't even say them all. And a bunch of people on YouTube as well. Jasper and Tabs, X-Vision, and something in another language I can't read. Omar, Twirl, Michelangelo, Sam, Logan, Rosalind, Chris, Hypro Inc., Ivan, Rawl, Scott. Man, names just keep coming in. Hi, everybody. How is it going? I hope it is going well. It's going well over here. Things have been busy, but I am excited to get back into the regular streaming schedule. We've got a lot to cover today. I'm sure we'll have questions coming in. Let's go over the rules really quick for anybody who is new or just showing up or just needs a reminder. I'm going to be taking questions. I will be taking them randomly from the chat, both from the Twitch chat and from the YouTube chat. I select them randomly. I just kind of scroll around and grab a link. I try and tackle most everything that I can, everything that seems practical. Certain things are just too big to tackle, and often we'll just tackle a small aspect of it. If you have a thing to reference, some sort of link, it has to be through Twitch. YouTube does not allow links, so you'd have to be on the Twitch chat, and I think there's a link to it, but in that case, you'll be able to find the Rocket Lasso Twitch easily enough. Or you can go to YouTube, and YouTube is great because you can pause, rewind, and do those differences. So there's reasons to be on one or the other depending on your style. I know a lot of people watch in the background while they're working, so choose your poison there. If you are linking to somebody's work as a reference for a question, then make sure I can see the name of the artist or studio who has created it. We have to give credit or we will not address it. But feel free to ask just like more abstracted questions, just a typed out question. And on YouTube, everybody there, I like the typed out question, so you are not at a disadvantage for typing out a question. Just make sure it's as detailed as it needs to be for me to be able to address it. And as always, it's cool to see all the amazing motion graphics work that is being made and is inspiring, but it's also really fun to tackle things that are not based off of somebody's existing motion graphics and to make something that's inspired from real life or a photo, things like that. That tends to be pretty cool as well. So to start covering a bit of news here, and also everybody start getting your links and questions together so we have things to tackle, but we have some other news to cover. First of all, it is episode 1 of Rocket Lasso Live. This is one of 3 live streams that I run. If you are supporting at Patreon, I have a bonus stream on Tuesdays and another one on Thursdays. And the goal there is to do a little bit more like R&D inside of Cinema 4D, go deeper, do experiments, things that are not... this show, I try and keep it like moving and not get too stumped on anything. On the other show, I'm willing to get stumped and really try and work through a problem and just sort of experiment and explore the space of an idea. And then the other show is trying to prep and record the tutorial of the week. So sometimes those two are related. Sometimes they switch between Tuesdays and Thursdays, depending on the way the ideas are coming. But those bonus streams are really fun, and there are people come and hang out in that as well. So if you're interested in that, you can head over to Patreon. You also get access to all the scene files we create, just covering all the basics for everybody as we come back. I see Dean's got a question in there already, so people start getting your questions in there because I can't tackle questions if we don't get them. In addition to that, the other big thing, well, a couple things. We've been working hard on plugins over here. Nothing quite ready to show yet, but when we're testing plugins, I'm actually testing in older versions of Cinema. So I spent most of the time in the last couple months in R20 instead of the newer versions of Cinema. So my brain is kind of flipped back to the old interface, so I might trip over that more than I did, but I think I'll get back into that very quickly. No worries there. And then the other big thing, obviously, that I've been focused on is we've been working on the website, which is finally out there in the world, ready to be seen. So it took way longer to get out than I wanted it to, but you can head to rocketlasso.com, and here is all the new stuff. First of all, I can see right now that the new streaming live feature has popped up. So whenever this Twitch stream is live, then this should pop up when you're on the site. You should know what's happening. Basic navigation around here. We've got we got some quick links here. Scroll down, and here's some tutorials. Here is actually the live stream embedded there that could be checked out. And then we've got some blog posts. The most important part of this, I think, is the tutorial page, in which I've got all this cool search functionality here. Here are all the tutorials I've made for Rocket Lasso, and they are searchable via a bunch of different things for the categories, the levels, although there's not too many, a lot of them. There's not much in the way of beginner right now. And then the version of cinema, most things are usually the later versions of cinema. And then you can also search for the Rocket Lasso live streams. Typically while you're doing searching, it won't show live streams because I know there's a big difference between like a proper tutorial that I've created and a live stream, which is looser and less focused. So this does not show live streams unless you check the include live streams checkbox. Or we can go to the Rocket Lasso live drop down here, and then that automatically turns on live streams, and now you can scroll through and see all the different episodes of the live streams. And clicking on any one of those, we can now see the episode as well as all of the embedded time codes. And if you were to click these time codes, it'll actually automatically play in the video. I also spent a bunch of time going through on Patreon and tracking down the scene files. Like I said, if you're supporting on Patreon, then you get the scene files. Patreon can be a little bit of a pain to navigate to older files where you have to scroll and scroll and scroll. Really tough. So I did put together on every single episode, and every tutorial for that matter, is a link, direct link to the Patreon scene file. So that is a nice bonus. Took a while to put that together. Next up, so that's the tutorials. Next up, well, if you click plugins, it'll go to Recall, which I guess we might as well click. And that'll shoot you right over to our first plugin. Then there's streaming. Actually, I haven't gotten to test this while it's live, so I think that this is cropping a little bit, so there's something we'll have to fix where the embed's not quite trapping that properly. And now, so that's the stream, and that there's usually a countdown there telling you when the next stream will be. Here is the blog, which I'm going to be trying to keep up to date with lots of information. If you are interested, here is the breakdown of the streams and what the other streams do. And then I'm going to pop this file open as well. I'm going to copy this link and post it in both chats. If anybody wants to check out the other streams, that's a good place to check out. And then also, if you are supporting a Patreon, if you want to track down the scene files, I put together this blog post that is literally a direct link to all of the scene files for Patreon. But of course, you have to be on there already. Next up is the community page, which is something we're still kind of putting together, but there's the contributors and kind of the mods over on the Rocket Lasso Slack channel, and they have access to this section of the site to create posts themselves. So we haven't really been posting too much because it's very new and it wasn't working until a couple days ago. But the idea is that the contests that get created, those will live here, and the winners and different things can get featured here, and articles from the different people on the Slack channel. And if you're not already on the Slack channel, you can just head over to the community page and click the sign me up on Slack and go and sign up for the Rocket Lasso Slack channel. And then last up, we just have the tech support, which is just directly, if it's for now, a recall question, and then contact for general inquiries. And that is pretty much the website overall. Took a while to get out there, but I'm very glad it is now. Nice and organized as far as the tutorials are concerned. We're still figuring out different additional details, and I hope to fill this out even more. Actually, something that's kind of nice is if we show the live streams, then this will show all the different guests that have been on the streams as well. You can search for when there's new features, so that would only show things like when R23 comes out or R22, all those different new ones. So lots of nice ways of navigating that. And anything else? I mean, I've got a couple other blog posts that I'm putting together. There's a couple other pages, and there are more sections to roll out, but this is what it is for now. So that should cover everything there. I'm going to jump back to the chat and see what we've got going on from everybody, and then we'll start answering questions. So yes, it is very nice to be back here, of course. And let's scroll around to see if there's any specific questions before we, or questions to me and method stuff before we get into doing Cinema 4D questions. We are back. Everybody's here. Lots of people hanging out. Joel's asking how much is the Patreon. At the $10 level, you get access to all the bonus live streams, and then at the $20 level, you get access to all the live streams and all the scene files. So, but then there's lower levels to see the additional things as well. So scrolling around, seeing how everyone is doing. Everything's coming through clearly. Yeah, so we're starting to get the questions in, and I think we are good to start trying to tackle things. So, yeah, let's do that. I'm going to switch over to the screen, and let's just start this proper. I have got Cinema 4D R23 already open and ready to go. Let's make sure that I've got a folder here. Yep, I can use that to navigate. And we will need to use this window to pop things up. All right. Now, I did notice that Dean... Oh, what we got here? Crossfader made it. Smecca made it. Welcome, everybody. Level Bevel. We got the old school people. We got new people. Tyrone is here. Eric. And Brawlius. Stellar. Anders. But I had seen that Dean had posted the first question successfully, so I want to make sure to click that one. It says I've been waiting a month for this. So let's click this link and pause this and mute the tab and drag this over. Let's take a look at what we got. So this is from JZ Labs, and this is a smoke dancer. It's neat, but I gotta say, I'm getting a After Effects type vibe from here and not so much a Cinema 4D vibe. It looks like we've got a series of stills as well. And if this were to be in cinema, it would end up being a very complex particle simulation on top of presumably some motion capture of some sort. Where in After Effects, I think we could do some sort of... I mean, I'm an expert in After Effects, but even particles in After Effects would run a lot quicker. There's nothing about this that is calling out for it to be three-dimensional. It could be entirely 2D. Although this is a good opportunity to mention, and hopefully I do have all the stuff in here, is Maxon had created, in R23, they made a bunch of new motion capture transfer things. And along those lines, they included a bunch of original motion capture. So these could be dragged in, and we can see... Hopefully, where is it? My display mode might be hiding joints, filter. There it is. Haha. Yeah, it was hiding it. All right. Yeah, often I hide the joints so that I can focus on a character, but there is the rig, and I just by loading that in, I could play, and I see that we've got some motion going, and that of course we could set up to loop and do a lot of different things along those lines. However, just as a fun little detail with what we saw you post, there are some different details that we will not go very far with. But if I were to do something really straightforward, say create one of the simulate particle, a regular old cinema particle emitter, the scene file is at 30 frames per second, which means if I jump this to 30 by 30, shrink this down to an emitter size of 0, then now this should be, and let's even give it a speed of 0. So a speed of 0. This should be spitting out exactly one particle every frame. I want this to go forever, so I'll crank that up to a crazy high number for stopping the emission. And that should be now spitting out particles. If I were to make that a child of any of these objects, and we'll do it the simplest way, well, that's a little, maybe we will put a tag. So instead, how about right-clicking on the emitter, adding a, let's add a rigging constraint tag, set that to the PSR, and now I should be able to just click on something like, say, this elbow, and now that should be stuck on the elbow. So as I hit play, that should be stuck there. Now you see we're going to be leaving this little trail behind. So that's specifically on the elbow, and it's very static. And it's some particles. We could push that further. Say if we gave this a little bit of speed and we make a lot more particles, then you can see that they will be starting to fly around as a group. And if we allow the emitter, let's just crank that up to the highest number, crank this up to the highest number, those will be emitting from everywhere, and you could end up with some fairly neat results like that. Specifically, what I would like to do is give this, leave it at 30 by 30, a speed of 0. So now there's, once again, exactly one particle per frame, But where this gets interesting is we should be able to create a tracer object, which is automatically fed the emitter because I had it selected. And by saying connect elements, it is now drawing a connection between every single one of those. And that could even, I guess they have to, yeah, it doesn't, we can't fade away from here, but these particles don't need to live forever. One thing, let's move or change the order of operations. We're getting this initial one where it's starting at 0 and jumping to its position. If we reorder this properly, we might be able to stop that frame of lag. Otherwise, we just need to make sure that the tracer is existing in the same beginning spot, I believe. So if I were to put the tracer as a child, click reset PSR, pull that out, hopefully we'll get rid of that initial line. Yeah. So now you can see we've got that line. If I tell these particles to only live for, say, 33 frames, then those should fade away. And now what's neat is having set up this very simple rig, we can do different effects on top of that. So in this case, I would be able to, let's go to simulate. We could use field forces, actually. Let's do that. Field force. And so here's a field force. It should be getting applied to everything. And by creating a solid, then this gives it a direction. You see now that these particles are flying up into the air as it goes, setting this solid, which is just a vector direction. I'm going to say, actually, I want to go -1, minus on y. And now we've essentially made a gravity. So as he runs, these individual particles are falling with gravity. That initial spot has come back where it, there's that frame. I don't know if it renders that way, but there is this frame 0 issue. You see that if I rewind to 0 and hit play, it looks fine. But once this timeline loops, there's actually going to be this pop for that first frame. I'm not sure. There's a way to fix that. I don't immediately know what I would do to fix that, but let's keep that in mind for something to watch out for. So now we actually have this drifting down, which is pretty neat by itself. And then, of course, we could layer additional things. I'm trying to think of what's the easiest way to make this loop. I haven't done this in a bit, but if we say key lock, we'd have to go to the timeline. See if I could do that. Select position, time track, after continue. Let's see if that will work. Will the character, oh, I guess I have to track. That only applied to the one selected object. Get all these rotations. Does that select them all? I just want to make sure I have everything selected, and then tell that to, I guess, repeat, offset, repeat. That's what I actually think we want. Offset, repeat. So with any luck, the character will, oh, he still stopped dead. Oh, repetitions 1. Let's say, still stopping dead. What am I doing wrong there? I'm fairly confident that would be. I'm pretty confident that that should have been what I needed to do, but I'm sure I missed something. I also thought that we could just select the top bar and everything would get applied. Repeat, oscillate, lots of repetitions. Go. If it doesn't work, then we'll just move on. Oh, I guess he's accelerating in. You see, it's not a perfect loop, so maybe it was working right away. But you see, it's stopping and then continuing because he begins running. So I really wanted to have dragged this in from just a loop, a cleaner loop. I don't know if any of these are designed to, yeah, walking loop. Is there a running loop? Stand to run, idle sprint, sprinting loop. There we go. That's what. Whoa, he's out of there. Just for keeping things on screen, I'm going to go with the walking loop. So we'll make a walking loop. And here's what's good about us making that constraint tag. And I actually did this on purpose. I was originally going to say, hey, constraint tag, or this emitter, just make it a child of the elbow. But now I should be able to just click this and say, no. Let's just once again link it to the elbow by clicking the little selection. And that can now be attached to anything. I could attach it to the wrist. And now that should be attached to the wrist instead. So, okay, now we've got that. Let's once again open up the timeline, and we know we got it working before. Once again, I think if I hit summary, that should select everything. I mean, they're all highlighted, so clicking summary, I would like to offset repeat, and let's cycle 11 times. And all of that should hopefully, yeah, there we go. Now we've got a perfect walking loop. So we've got one line with gravity applied. I don't need to see this field force, so those are just falling. In fact, I don't even need to see the emitter. I just want to see the end result of this line. And that is now drifting away down. But keep in mind, the field force is not limited to something like gravity. We could, of course, create a random field. It's currently a Perlin noise, but immediately you see how this starts drifting and doing this really neat kind of exploding line thing. If we increase the scale, we're going to start seeing a little bit more uniformity between it, but these will drift around doing their own thing, everything chasing behind this character. Having done that, then now essentially we've got this very simple rig. And I believe, how do I want to do this? I guess we could just manually copy it. So I do think it'd be good to probably group this. I'll create a null. Put those both in as a child. If we were inclined, I'll just name that 1 for now. But creating a copy, set that to 2. Select this constraint tag and again link it to some other object. I'll do that again. We'll just make a few of these. 3, 4, link to, let's do the foot and the foot, and we'll put one last one on the head. 5, link to, yeah, we'll do the head. All right, so we'll still get that little blip right there, but now we should have 5 different tendrils, each doing their own thing, and their motion will be entirely driven. Let's add some more time here. There we go, nice. So their motion is entirely driven by the way the emitters are behaving and the field force, which is nice. We can increase the speed. We could add an animation speed on top of that. Like I said, if we shrink this back to 100, those become very individual. So they become very tiny. You see how they drift apart individually. Something I definitely like doing is making 2 random fields. And with 2 of them, I'll rename this one large and name this one small. And I love when you're building this type of field setup. Drop this to 444 so that it stays in frame. Inside of field force, add the large field and add it on top. That'll be normal and add. So the large one, we'll scale that way up. So now we've got a large one, which is giving us uniformity between them, and then a small one, which is giving these tiny little micro changes to it. And so with those 2 things combined, you can get some pretty nice results. Something else that's nice with using the tracer is you can tell the tracer to interpret things. So I'll select these tracers. We can interpret the type. Currently it's set to linear. But I could say, hey, I want that to be a B-spline, and B-spline is the smoothest of all the spline types. And if we give this intermediate points, in this case, we'll do uniform. This will have a certain number of subdivisions. We don't need much. You can see right here, this is none. And as soon as I add even 1, you see we're going to start getting a little bit of curvature. It's smoothing these out that little bit, just so you don't get those harsh angles. And it's just smoothing out between them. So now we see these individual lines, each doing their own thing. And I know this isn't exactly answering the question, but hopefully it's showing off a little bit of the new stuff that we have inside of R23 and a rig to give you these nice tracing lines and have them affected by all the forces that you could want. And even this, everything's additive. So if I take this solid, add it on top, say I want to add, now we've got the large effect, the small effect, and gravity on top of it, or once again, that could go positive, and now they'll be drifting upward. Layering these things up, you can see how it can get really interesting really quickly. And if you want those to live for a really long time, these emitters could just have a longer lifetime. So if I say 111, that will live for about 3 times as long. It'll keep on drifting even further. You can see it'll get a little bit crazy if you leave it too long. But that could be an effect you're going for. So I think that's kind of neat. I will give this scene file a save. That's the walking loop. These scene files will be available on Patreon. So give that a shout out. Episode 1, scene files. 1A walking with trails. There we go. Let's see if there are any additional questions to follow up on that. I know more questions are coming in. Twitch has a lot of conversation going. And let's see. I know more people are showing up and saying hello. RBX is saying, can I do every week live or upload a video a week? Well, you're in luck because this is the start of season 2. This is actually season 3 of Rocket Lasso Live, which means I will be doing this every single week for like the next 30 weeks. And the bonus streams on Tuesdays and Thursdays, of course. And with any luck, I'll be able to do the weekly tutorials. So there'll be way too much of me. You'll be getting totally sick of all of my content. But this will be happening regularly. No worries there. And yeah. If you made a lot of these... Dutch is mentioning that you might be able to get a similar effect going with hairs. And yeah, if you got rid of all the springiness in the hairs, they might just drift and do their own thing and they would just be existing automatically. That could potentially work. I think that field forces work with hair. And... Let's see, there's a question on you, and I tend to like to alternate questions between YouTube and Twitch, and RBX had a question about being able to create a necklace on a character, and they are correct in saying it sounds simple, but it's not simple. Unfortunately, it is not a trivial thing to try and put together. Let me think of what we can do. First of all, there's a level where I might just continue from here because of all the stuff being built in. I haven't done this in a bit. However, let's see if I could do a quick motion transfer. So if I go up, Cinema has a male puppet set up, which is a T-posed rig, which gives us a mesh to work from to try and do something dynamic. And if I take this motion transfer and drag in this walking loop, then now this character, and you see how simple it was just to do that. I wasn't even thinking about it, but now we have a walking character. And actually, I think there's even a... There might be a setting to make it follow. Oh, we'd have to make it follow. But you know what? I want it walking in place, so that's perfectly fine. We'll hide the original, and we can now see this character just doing a little walk. And that should give us a good basis to put something dynamic on it and see if it actually sticks. RBX saying that they tried it with the chain tutorial I had, and it works as long as the chain links are not... I'm assuming you mean not too many chain links. And yeah, fair enough. Let's see what I do. If we're going a simple, well, actually I was going to say a simple version, but simple is not necessarily something we get for free. Out of curiosity, let's grab the mesh here. Oh, there's no subdivision surface, so this is actually disappointingly high poly. I don't want this to be as high poly if we're going to be running this in real time. So I'm going to... What's the best way to do this? Actually, here's a cheap way to do it. I shall copy his mesh and throw that into a... Actually, don't we have... I actually completely forgot about this, but we have a polygon reduction tool now. So I can drop that into the polygon reduction, and it's actually not doing a super sexy job of reducing that. It's very triangulated, but it is a lot lower count. And if you... Is there not a checkbox on that? Wait, I don't want polygon reduction. I want remesh. What am I doing? Like I said, I haven't touched R23 in a while. Remesh. There we go. That's going to do a better job for us. I want the mesh density to be less. There we go. That's more what I'm talking about. So we got a nice low poly mesh. And I was going to say, where's the only quad checkbox? Because if you turn this on, essentially it subdivides it by 1, but it gets rid of all the triangles. If we wanted to get rid of triangles, I don't actually need it to be that low. It's kind of messing up these shoulders a bit. But do I care about that? I'm trying to think if I care about that. I don't think I do. The keep outline. Not too big of a difference. Keep creases. Just seeing if it does anything. We could spend some time and really paint this on and make it nice. I could also use a spear to approximate the shape, which is my favorite way of doing it. I think that that should be stable and not calculate every frame. So my plan here is just to drop this as a child of the torso. And it does seem to have not positioned correctly, but that's simple enough to just hit E for move. I shall turn off X. So I could just eyeball this and move it to approximately the correct spot. Now that's not something we would actually be visually seeing. And the neck, you know what? The neck is not that many polygons. I'm just going to leave it. So the neck and the remesh will become dynamic objects. Rigging, no, simulation, rigid body. And yeah, I think we can leave the rest default for now. And with those two things being dynamic, they need to be dynamic off. So now they are dynamic, but they won't just pop out and fly away. So that should be fine now. Now those are dynamic, which puts me in the position where I should save this before I do something that breaks it. Walking with necklace. The first thing I wanted to do was create an end side, and actually it's still here. So here's my end side, and I just want to try putting a soft body simulation on a closed spline, because to tell you the truth, I can't recall exactly what that might do. So I don't care too much about how this lines up. NA, we'll get rid of my polygons, seeing the polygons, and approximately line that up. End side allows me to directly type in exactly the number of points I want, in this case 32. Right clicking on the end side simulation soft body. It is now a soft body spline, hitting play. And yeah, so it is a closed spline, and it is falling, and it is staying on the neck. A couple of problems we see right away is, first of all, it's not super reactive, and it's really stretchy. So those are things we could probably get around. First of all, the flexion is how much it can bend. So by lowering this down, it becomes more bendy. I don't know if that'd be too visible. And then structural is the main thing we have for stretchiness. So if I crank that up really high, then now you can see it's not stretching as long. Now, the thickness of the chain, I would think would be an issue, but let's not worry about that yet. I would like to see it a little more clearly. So let's feed this into a sweep. Holding down Alt, it'll become a parent. Holding down Shift, create an end side, it will become the child. T for scale, scale this down. Let's just see a piece of geometry there. Just a quick new material. Make it kind of a goldish color, nothing fancy, just so it pops out and we can see it a little more clearly. So let's just see what this is doing. So you can see that this by itself is doing an okay job. It's bouncing around, it's staying on the character, but it definitely has there's definitely a sense of weightlessness to it. It definitely has like float. And I don't know how well we'll be able to get around that, but let's see what we can do. Save again. The main changes we'll be making are to this dynamics tag. So let's increase the gravity for now. And actually, let's first of all, I'm going to turn off this damping. Damping drains the energy out from the simulation. I just want to see if that has a variable here. No, I mean, well, yeah, I mean, it's gonna be bouncier now. I'm not against that. And then let's increase. Well, we could just increase gravity. We could increase the time scale. To start out with, I will just increase the gravity. And you see that this gravity is now strong enough that it, at some point anyway, was able to yank it through the neck. The main thing to think here would be going to expert and increasing our steps per frame, which should make this twice as unlikely to actually slip through. So yeah, that's hopping, but it is sliding around an awful lot. Honestly, when it comes to splines, I don't think that bounce and friction, frictions might mean something, but let's get rid of all the bounce and all the friction, if that would be a variable. See, visually it doesn't really look different. And can I hide? Yeah, there. connected to those splines. So, I mean, that's working. I don't know. It's working surprisingly well on one level, but on the other level, it's doing these little hops. The next thing I'll try is under dynamics, under general. Let's try increasing, actually reset the gravity back to the default. And I'm going to try increasing the time scale. So it's now calculating twice as fast, which is okay. Let's try increasing that again. 300 times speed. So gravity should take over 300 times faster. Yeah, like I say, it's not. It gets a lot of height. Chop, in regards to your question, I have a really, really thorough tutorial about the concepts of like flexion and shear in my cloth dynamics tutorial. It's a 3-parter, and you can find that on the website if you just search for the word cloth in the tutorials page. So that will give you some breakdowns of all of that. I'm trying to think. I don't want to just lock this down, but why is it so floaty? Just to be sure, I'm going to. Oh wait. Oh, okay. Now I feel silly. Why is the torso's not moving? It's just staying in place. No wonder it kind of was floating. Why is it not traveling with the rest of the body? It's a child. Oh, I know what I did here. I haven't really worked with these mannequins very much. What is happening is, oh, looks like it made a change to the state of the neck at not 0, and it now is permanently deformed it. Not necessarily a big problem. But in any case, this torso is not mechanically bound. It's not like a child of the skeleton. It is bound to it. It's got a tag that is locking it to it. So by making this a child of it, that's not actually doing anything. Now, the first thing I'll try is let's just make the torso dynamic, and we'll see if it is too slow to calculate. It's not, okay, it's not the fastest, but it's running okay. So let's try that for now. I'll just hide this. If we need to, we'll just make that a child of the skeleton. So now it's actually seeing this mesh. And you can already see it's working significantly better. It is actually staying relatively stuck to the body. It does still have this little hop to it, but that is what the body's doing. I'm trying to think of what properties you would give it to perhaps prevent that a little. If we gave this some damping, then it would be not caring about shooting up too high. But I think it would also be slower to fall. Just for a test, I'm going to put a bunch of damping here. And you can see that does calm it down a lot. If you do 99%, that'll calm it down even more. Keep in mind, this is fully dynamic. So when we see this from the front, it's not too bad. But when we look at it perfectly on the side, there's definitely these little hops that come along with it. I do like draining the energy out a little bit, but that's a very brute force tool, so we'll come back to that. We do have the time scale. And we could increase the gravity again. The gravity is now high enough that it's just snaking away off the body. The only way to compensate for that is more steps per frame, which is going to slow us down. But I just want to see how close we can get here. Jump that to 25, and let's see how high we can push the gravity. Yeah, we still get the hop. 500%. Calculation speed, less gravity. And then, once again, I don't think friction is actually a variable when it comes to these, but for the experiment, put a lot of friction. You see, yeah, a lot of friction doesn't really seem to give us any sort of a difference. Now, we could lock this kind of in place so that that back part couldn't move, and I'll just show you a really, really quick, these dynamics broke that inside, so I can copy and paste. And actually, yeah, copy and pasting seems to bring it back to life, so we'll just do that. So that's back to the original. If I hit save and then play, oh, does it? No, it does jump back to that. So yeah, the state of these dynamics broke at some point, and it's going to remember that no matter what I do. I will attempt to clear initial state and say set. No, see, even if I hit set initial state, it's like, no, I've already got a state here. Not the biggest deal. because I just need to create an inside and recreate it. Yoop. And 32 was the magic number. Actually, if I duplicate this onto that, I wouldn't be surprised if it actually transfers the problem over to it. Yeah, it does. Well, dang it. I mean, it's still... Yeah, that's just a thing with dynamics. We didn't put a recall tag on it. This is just something that happens when you... And I didn't think I did, but if you make a change at not the time of 0, you can essentially bake in the dynamics. And there's nothing that we can do about that. Even at the time of 0, that is what it thinks, and it's baked into the tag, not even the end side. I wonder if I change the point count, if that would force it, because it no longer matches. It still pops, but at least it's not flying away. Well, let's just keep going with that. All I was going to say is if we do something like, this won't be the most robust dynamic feature, but dragging this up to the neck area, T for scale, pull this down. So this could be a dynamic object that it's not going to move up and down with a character. It's just going to be stuck in space. But if we were to put a ring on the neck and then make it invisible, you could trap it inside and have a relatively small force right there and keep that trapped inside. So, I mean, all that's sort of one method. I wasn't even planning on staying on... Oops. I wasn't even planning on staying on this as the full test, saying on just a soft body on this. Because typically I actually prefer, even though the soft body dynamics on spline are great, I do like that. I like better actually making a dynamic chain of some sort. It's not trivial to put together. It's not trivial to put together because we need to make the entire chain. The best way to do it is, let me think, I don't want to break anything, so scaling everything to their approximate size seems like a good idea. T for scale, move this back in space, and we want this to probably be about as thin as the necklace. I'm going to leave it a little chunkier just for speed purposes, and so that we can eat up the space quicker. Dang it, I can't grab X from that angle anyway. All right, so let's make that clean 1 by 1 by 4. Okay, if that were to be a simulation rigid body and we create a connector, we could build the automatic connector. I'm trying to think of, when all is said and done, how I would want this done. One moment. Starting to get a little toasty in here. Open up the window. Anyway, I want to build a connector chain. That is the goal. So, connector inside of there. I would like a is there ball and socket? I think ball and socket is what I want. T for scale, just visually shrink that a bit. Put this on the corner. Now we could be pretty rough with this and say, hey, that links to this. We could make an espresso rig to link from one to the other. That could take a while. I would prefer to make a chain or clone them, but my worry is we need this to be in a circle. It would take a while to manually interlink them, but if we make it large enough, it'll just take like a minute. So I'll do it. Ring. Okay, it's already pretty good settings. This is the way I like building everything dynamic, is actually manually making a rig for it. So placing this approximately in the correct spot. create as many copies as we would need, just enough so they can't escape. So if I do 16, there's a little bit of space in between them, but that is fine. We now have to manually interlink 16 different ones. There really isn't too much of a way around that. Save this as the next iteration of the scene file. And let's just tackle it. We won't make the espresso, we'll do it the manual way. So 0 connects to 1. And because I loaded that one in, we only ever have to connect the next one. But we do have to connect the next one. And if we mess up, we will be able to visually see what we messed up. So I need to always select the next connector and then drag in the next cube. The next connector, the next cube. So nothing to do but to do it. Not so bad. Of course, it's highly likely you'd want to increase your resolution here. And then you'd have to manually link all of these again or shrink each of them. You could actually build pretty robust rigs, and we have done that in the past. The last one, very important. I need to loop back to the beginning and link this in. Definitely save it to make sure that those are all indeed linked. Hit play. And hey, well, okay, at least I got that right. It didn't break. So having done that, now we have these dynamics. Reset time, reset gravity. So now we're back to sort of defaults there. So now we have this chain fall. And we shouldn't pay attention to any one link. These are cubes. We can make it calculate faster and more accurately. Well, faster and smoother. If we say, hey, right now the shape is automatic, which probably means it's being detected as a box. But I can say, no, you are an ellipsoid, and the ellipsoid will make it smoother. Now, these do have bounce and friction, although there is nothing telling these not to rotate. So they can freely and independently spin from each other. It might have been better to use like a different hinge type, like a cardan or something. I'm going to see if I can get away with not worrying about that, but there's a good chance we will need to worry about it. But in order to stop all that super crazy random spinning, I'll say, hey, angular damping. Let's calm down the rotation a bunch, 90%. 99%. They still spin a lot. Yeah, that goes to, like I said, the connector type. I don't know that will be too hard to fix. That's all working, so I'll save. Search for the word CON, and that pops up all the connectors, so I can easily grab them. And with all the connectors, these are ball and sockets, but I think we don't want... I mean, you can't do a hinge. I think it would be a cardan, but it has to be at the proper angle, which is none too trivial. This is not the angle. So we'd need to spin each of them independently 90 degrees. Okay, I think I guessed correctly there. Oops, don't move them. The angles are a little wonky, but let's just see what happens. Deselect. Oh, better. Definitely better. We've also got extra steps per frame here. I will zero those back out to 5. Here's a thing that is a little unintuitive. How often do you think about this? I just went from 25 steps per frame, and look how jittery it is. Look at all this little shaking and jitter we get. By decreasing the steps per frame, it's actually going to smooth it out, which is kind of unintuitive. But in this particular case, what is happening is if it's being really accurate, it keeps on, as the body moves, is passing through the body, and there's very little in the way of wiggle room. So it's constantly being like, no, move, over and over and over again. So by saying, no, worry about it less, then we actually get smoother results. Not more accurate, but definitely smoother results. So what's great about building a rig like this, and we need to clear out our search, is now we've got all these nice dynamic settings that we can directly interact with. Things like bounce. So we can say, okay, no bounce, lots of friction, or we can say, hey, no friction. And now look at how instantly how this is now flopping around on the body. Keep in mind only the torso and neck are dynamic, but look how that's freely sliding around. Where if instead we say 99% friction, then now it's pretty static on the body. Keep in mind this is a combination of the dynamics of both the body's friction and its friction, but this is at a reasonable amount of 90%, so that's fine. Scroll back up, grab all the dynamics. Just for the fun of it, I'll crank this up to 999 just to see how relatively static it could be. But yeah, it's constantly being kind of bounced away from it, so I wouldn't expect that to be completely stuck on the body. But yeah, some friction goes a long way. But you know what? I think it did look nice when it was a little freer to slide. So that looks really nice right there. And these very simple connections are working because of the connector type we used, which actually worked right away. It is not allowed to really spin around, which made them all stable to each other. And now we've got a decent necklace hanging. And keep in mind, we are pretty much back to default dynamic settings. So if we wanted a little bit more accuracy or to return to the ground quicker, saying a time scale of 200, which does mean we need more steps per frame, 15. Yeah, look at how much more static that is by doubling the time scale. And now it's keeping contact with the body a lot more accurately. So there's just a couple of settings we can tinker around with now that will enable this to be nice and static. If the body were doing a crazier movement, jumping up and down, but it's definitely keeping it alive. Now, I am quite happy with the way that's working. You can see all the different changes we might be able to make to this. And another important one is we had drained out a lot of this rotational stuff. If I zero that back out again, I just want to see if there's much of a difference. No, not too much. So, and 5% is a good idea just to stop it from gaining unwanted energy. However, crank this up to 99%, and that should slow this down a lot as well. Let's just look at the difference. You can see how it's kind of just shifting. Like when the weight really shifts, it's kind of jumping back and forth. At 0, you can see it kind of hopping around a little bit more. So that is that's a difference between those two. Selecting all of them, I did like. Let's put some damping on, and the angular, yeah, I kind of like that looser. So that's kind of freely moving around. I think it's actually quite nice overall. Now, it doesn't look that, depending on what your necklace is supposed to look like, this is giving us a very fast calculating approximation of it. So here's where things can get fun. If I hold down Control or Command on the Mac, as I collapse this null, it's actually going to, let me show you. See, these are expanded and each of these is there. And let's say I want them all collapsed. I have to manually do it. If instead I hold down Control as I click on the parent of it, and now let go of Control, now I hit plus, all of them have collapsed. And it actually does the opposite. If I hold down Control and expand, everything's gotten expanded. So just a really quick tip right there for being able to collapse all those. Okay, having done that, I shall select all of the cubes. And let's make another tracer object. The tracer should, because I had those objects selected, they're already fed in, say I want to connect the elements. And I want it to happen afterward. And turn off vertices. Let me show you. If I hide the necklace, you can see that every single point is interconnecting. I don't want that, so don't trace vertices. Oh, I guess it might be connect all objects. Yeah, so connect all objects, don't trace vertices. And now you can see we've got this circle. I believe it's a close spline, and it'll close it. And I can also say linear. I want that to be a B-spline, and give it some uniform subdivisions, and that's going to smooth that out quite a bit. Hit play, and with any luck, now we have a spline in there so that can do whatever we want. Now we do get that, it's just a order of operations thing. The spline, the tracer calculates late, so you can in the viewport get what looks like a frame of lag, which here I think we are, that feels bouncier than it. If we turn this on, yeah, take a look at the way, it's a little hard to tell, but you can see that the line is like drifting up higher than the actual necklaces. That's just because it's lagging a frame behind. That wouldn't happen at render time, so just keep that in mind. Having done that, this can be fed into a sweep. Let's do the simple version. So that could be fed into a sweep. That can also be fed an end side. T for scale. Yep. The radius can be set to the equivalent of the rectangles, the cubes that we fed in, and those will lock in. We can make this any shape we want. So, okay, that's a straightforward version. But in addition to that, we don't have to do it this way. I'm not going to make a fancy chain link, but let's do the simplest possible one, which would just be, I'll make a torus, make a cloner, drop the torus into the cloner, set the cloner to object mode. The object will be the tracer. Let's do an order of operations so it comes after the sweep. T for scale on the torus. Let's get this approximately correct. Something like that. And I want this to run quickly. So, and B, see my polygons. Lower this way down. Do 6. Lower that way down. 8. And make this thinner. Nope. Let's make this one thinner. Something like that. Okay. So that is now cloning onto the object. It is a count, which is good. That's what I want. Let's do a increased count here. And then 2 different things we could do here if we want to alternate these. One, if I was limited in time, you could just make a duplicate of one, put it into a group, so Alt-G, or just grab the secondary one and change the orientation. So I just guessed, and it is X plus or minus, and now you can see that we have 2 different toruses, and it's just going to alternate between those 2. So I'm not sure that the angles are overly correct on that or anything, and we could be seeing some stretch, but now we've got a chain, we've got a series of links, but those are not actually dynamically calculating, but we do get a bunch of links traveling around, and they will bend and follow along as if this is, and it is fully dynamic. It's just a low poly approximation of the dynamics. I guess it is worth rendering this out just to make sure that the frame of lag goes away. Otherwise, actually, maybe we can get away with not worrying about the frame of lag if we bake this. So let's try that. I don't think we've broken anything, so I will just save over that. Command or Control D to dynamics to go to cache, and now clicking bake here will bake all the dynamics at the same time. It's in spite of being relatively long timeline, 330 frames, this is not taking too long to simulate because we kept it all pretty clean. Let's see. Okay, yeah, you see that did fix it. And as I said, I don't think it would render that way, but even if it does render that way, you can see you can fix it by baking it, and now we don't get that frame of lag. And it was just, what was happening is, I think the tracer calculates the before the dynamics calculated, so then it's always looking like it's a frame behind. So, fix the camera. The camera is lagging? Well, let's just, I'll just hide away then. And so there we go. And yeah, it's staying dynamically. Keep in mind we baked it, so it's not going to change, but we do have the ability to modify the chain to whatever extent that we want. Now, these are clones, so we could make changes to make that a bit smoother. And we can fix the spacing. Keep in mind there will be a bit of stretching. Actually, there's very little. The more links that we have in the original dynamic chain, the more potential stretching there would be. There's actually not that much here. I'm impressed. So we can shrink those a bit. And yeah, I thought they would look like they're stretching and pushing apart from each other. Currently, they are all perfectly in alignment like that. Something I think might be nice would be adding a MoGraph random. I don't want this to randomly affect the position. I would like it to affect the rotation. I guess we could do like 1 or 2 degrees on that axis. And let's do a couple degrees on that one. But the one we really want is this one. And now they can randomly rotate a bit. So keep in mind there's no mechanical part to this. I'm just saying, hey, those have some variation that they can randomly spin. Is this, yeah, this is set to random right now. So we can spin this as much as we want up to the point that one spinning one way and the other spinning the opposite won't visually intersect each other. So, and that's probably like 45 degrees is the magic number. So we could, you can see that indeed seems to be the case. Something that's interesting would be, well, this is just randomness. I would like to crank up the contrast of the randomness so they're more likely to be flat than not, but that would be modifying that rig. And going into detail I don't think is necessary. I'd rather get into another question. So now that's all baked and we get some chains laying down as they are there. Actually, because it's bouncing around and moving quite a bit, there's a good chance we could make this animated, give this a noise. The scale would be kind of small. I think I'd want to set this to something like UV. Let's even say indexed. So each of them, it's not based on world space. And let's see. It's a tiny detail, and there's so much motion. I guess we wouldn't really see it. But if we got it right, we could actually have those individual chain links like spinning and moving around randomly. It's noise based, so everything becomes less intense. So I'll just crank that up a bit. And now those are randomly spinning and rotating. I cranked up the noise speed a lot just to see it, but put this back to something reasonable. And now those would be randomly moving around. A silly additional detail, but something that could be done. But I think random is a good place for that. All right, that I think will wrap up this particular question, but that was fun. And I really like that we have these this dummy and those this motion capture to work from. It's nice. So we got Shlomo and Abdo, Happy Designer, Sam, Shadow. Lots of people hanging out. Hopefully that covered everything. Sorry that the camera seems to be lagging. It's hard to tell here. Looks good on my side, but let me just take a look to see. Actually, there's a bunch of lag. Not lag, but just the delay, and I can't hear. So, and if I hear it, then you'd hear it. So we won't worry about it. But I'll just do the full screen for now. All right. I'm going to get more questions. Let's see if there's follow-ups to this. Yeah, we are on Twitch too. Yeah, Zach was like, no, it's the remesh command. Yep, that's going back to the beginning there. A big clock on the chain. I mean, you totally could attach something heavy on the end of that chain. No soft body from clones. I'm not sure how I would do a soft body from clones on that, but now we see it transitioned. Ruckus. Oh, and people on Twitch were saying that the video wasn't lagging behind, so that is that might just be on somebody else's screen. I don't know. Give me a heads up if the audio desyncs. I know it's super annoying to see a mouth not synced up with that. Okay, looking around for questions. There's a bunch of conversation. Let's see. Is there any new names here? That's dangerous. Travis has a link to Vimeo. Let me just take a quick look at it here, and then I'll pop it up on the screen. Okay, seems safe enough. Do this. All right, let's check out what we've got here. Screen. Link. And mute the tab. Okay, we got some super crazy detailed stuff going on here. This is from Tendril, who always do amazing work for ESPN. Did you call out when the cylinders are pushing up the surface and have gold textured edges? All right, we'll see. Was there a time you called out there? Oh, you 4 seconds in. So you even time coded it. Whee! Well, okay. Floop. Bloop. Let's see what that transition looks like, because it's really quick. Like frame, boom, and it suddenly started here. And then you can see some of these starting to push up. Let's see. There's a lot of things you could do. Lovely spot, by the way. I kind of want to watch the rest of it, but let's keep going and focus in on the very specific question. That's the tricky thing too, is as Cinema 4D becomes more and more advanced, there starts being more and more ways of solving every problem. And traditionally, I would say that we do this texture based. We would push everything up via a texture, but as a very, let's just explore as we go. So here's a plane. We'll make it a bit bigger, 1200 by 1200. We're gonna need quite a few polygons. Let's try 100 by 100, which is a lot, but not that many. We'll do 200 by 200. Could slow us down a bit, but we'll see. So my first thought is, how about creating a, let's start it simple. Make a single cylinder. Yeah, I don't want it to be an actual cylinder. Let's not do it with an actual cylinder because we can use a circle. And with a circle spline, actually even circle spline gets subdivided more than we need it to. If we're going to optimize, let's use an end side as always. 32 segments around, and we'll even leave this relatively large to start out with. We don't need to completely recreate what we're seeing there to a T. I want to deform. Let's start out by actually making these push up through the surface. That's my goal right now. The thought here being the simplest version, we need some sort of deformation here. We could use a displacement deformer, but I have been preferring using things like the plane effector as a child of the plane, set to deformer, deform the points mode. Currently it is pushing on Y, and I think you'll see if we change it on Y, it's actually moving kind of left and right because this effector, essentially Z is always up, Z is out. So if I type in 100 on Z, you see that's where it pushes. Now 100 is too much, so 20 for now. Fall off, what do I want to fall off? Actually, I'm going to save myself some time. And right now, create a connector. So that connect will hold the end side. So now inside of the plane, I'll feed it the connect. I want to bring it in as a spline object, and immediately we're going to see kind of a weird, it's going to look like a weird shape. This is actually a spiral because by default, the spline is coming in as a curve that's set to along. Instead, I want to bring this in as a mask. Actually, before I set that, I just want to say a little detail. Do you see how this feels really stepped? Do you see how we're seeing like this, almost like a moire pattern where it's like there's something, there's something, there's something? That is happening, and I bet you if we were to count all of them, there are going to be 32, because that is the resolution of our sides. So if I double that up to 64, we're going to see twice as many steps. So just by constantly increasing that amount, you will eventually super smooth it out. So just a little detail to keep in mind. Anyway, connect. I want this to be a mask. And the mask is along Y, up and down. And now you can immediately see we get this nice little push up because the spline is being treated as a mask. The best feature of this, and it's the reason why I went with this for this effect, is we've got this distance slider. Currently it's set to outside, which is what we want. And what this is doing is it's viewing the spline that we're feeding it and then kind of fading out the radius. So we can actually increase this quite a bit. And you see we get this nice big old fall off on the edge, or we can pull it way in and really smooth that out. So I will give this a decent one, relatively large, because once we've done that, we could do it remapping here, but I'm going to just create a curve. So it's taking this final effect from here, and then I will taper it and watch on this curve as I sort of do an ease in, ease out. We are easing in and easing out of that shape, getting that transition. So that now has become the profile shape of the way this curve will look. And the size of it gets determined by how much I increase this distance. So we can get nice and smooth or pretty sharp, but in either case, we're getting that transition. And now we get this nice little bump that way. So, okay, working well enough. If this end side were to be fed into a matrix, now you see we get a grid of them. Just for fun, we'll set this to a honeycomb, which lays flat on the ground, and divide by 2. Divide by 2. Get them a little more tightly spaced. There we go. That fills it out pretty nicely. And we get an entire grid of them. And now we have a cloner set up so that whatever we want to feed through here to make them appear, that will be what does it. So in this case, how about scoot this a little bit. This one, pretty straightforward. How about a plane effector? Yeah, plane effector, which we could use control scale or position. I'm thinking, yeah, position is good. Minus, actually, there's something a little bit worrisome is the spline. Oh, the spline is a, the spline is a, oh, I hadn't thought about that. It's a spline mask, which is like infinitely projected. So no matter how I move these up or down, it's going to continue applying full power. I hadn't even thought about that. Now we could get around that by doing scale instead, a uniform scale of -1. They'll scale them down to 0, creating a fall off, and let's say a linear one. I could scale them in like this, but I think we'd want them more to push up, which, yeah, now I'm trying to think of how I would do that. I think, no, I want them uniform. Currently I was affecting this cloner as an alternative. Let's say we don't affect the cloner, so that gets deleted from the cloner. And we have this plane effector, which is where are these bumps getting applied. I could just feed the linear. We don't even need the plane. We'll just feed the linear in there, which now becomes a multiply on top of it. So now they'll get pulled in this way, which works. Hide the circles just so we can see the end result. This does work, but you will see that they're getting this little slow transition in. They kind of fade in from the side. That could be harder or easier to see depending on how tight we make this. But if it's really tight, you can see that they're really going to fade up like that. Kind of goes against what I was hoping to do there. The spline mask is a very quick thing to calculate. We didn't have to go with the spline mask. There's alternatives we could have done that would be working just about as well, that would push them up more uniformly. But this is such a nice clean rig. I do like this. I'll save it, but I really don't want to use a volume. Displace bumps. This is doing a fine job of what we are asking of it. As an alternative, if we weren't using an end side, instead we actually did use a cylinder. We clone a bunch of those. This plane effector could be getting affected not by this spline, but instead by the actual geometry this time. So dragging this in, this is geometry that it's seeing. And let's make sure that we've got everything fed in proper. Okay, so this is now feeding in the geometry, and it's seeing the points. Instead of a point, I could say I want to be seeing the volume, and now you see we do indeed get this volume going, which is fine. That does give us those shapes. And it could be fine here, but volume is relatively slow to calculate, especially compared to other modes, specifically volume. Yeah, surface will be seeing polygons, points sees points, and each one of these is slower than the one that comes before it. Now, having used a volume, is it possible to get a smooth this out at all? Because there is no remap here. It's in the volume or it's not. And a lot of these transition, yeah, it's just full power. So how would I fade? I don't think I could fade. That could be affecting a vertex map, and then that could get blurred. We need a lot of resolution to compensate. But just to show you the last bit of, actually, yeah, I probably know what I would do. We don't need to, potentially, we don't need to compensate that with MoGraph. We could compensate this with, this is currently a deformer. It would have been a good idea to name it as a deformer. If we wanted to compensate for this, that's just pushing up. Let's just grab a smoothing. Now that can smooth the end result. I've been typically pulling stiffness down to 0 and then just increasing the iterations. It just causes us to need less iterations. So that, now you can see that that is creating the smoothing for us. And these bumps come in, and this is all based off these cylinders now, which means this should be susceptible to positional modification. So this now getting a linear field. Let's see what we've got. Those are... Well, first of all, let's visually push these down further. I don't want it pushed up. I want it to push down. So then when it pushes up, it doesn't need to push very far. I mean, in fact, this should probably just be like minus 20. And then the entire rig gets moved downward. So that would just barely pierce the surface. Now, you see that these are indeed moving up and down. However, I don't feel like the geometry is updating. You see these push up, which is fine, but it's not updating our deformer. Which seems like a problem. Now, if I turn it off and on, you see it does update. So I think that something about this rig is not refreshing. Just for curiosity, I'll replace that with the cloner directly to see if it does acknowledge it. Yeah, okay, see now it does acknowledge it. It doesn't like the connect. I think the connect is telling Cinema that it doesn't have to refresh, but it does. So by getting rid of the connect object, big surprise there. But now you see they actually do just kind of appear. So now that they do appear, it's just kind of they're on or they're off. There's no in between there. However, the hope here would be this might be susceptible to a delay. So let's find out. Let's make a delay and currently set to smooth. That might be what we need. Yeah. So yeah, now they are just being turned on or off, but their motion is transitioning in or out by the delay. So it doesn't matter how fast I do this. They're going to move up and down at the same speed, but fully as a row when it crosses the threshold, which is pretty neat. And that crossfade is determined entirely by this delay. So if I want to transition quicker, we drop this down smaller. And now as I move this, no matter how fast I move it, it's going to be quicker. Like I can move this really slowly and they still drop at the same speed, or you can move it quickly and they all raise at the same speed. It's all determined by that. If we were so inclined, we could also create a second one. Oh, I can't. I can drag a copy. It's a good idea to rename these, say spring, and this one will be spring. See what this does for us. Yeah, do you see there's a little bit of a boing, boing, boing? Not too much. And these two will fight each other a bit. This delay is coming in kind of, well, it's not too slow, but it's slowing it down a lot. So the quicker this is, I didn't even change the springy effect, but by decreasing the smooth, as I move this in, we're going to feel that the springy action even more. So just keep that in mind. Spring, let's make it springier. Because why not? Them disappearing will not be as sexy, but... Oh, and you actually see them, they're getting clamped. Always got to remember, turn off clamp, so they can overshoot. Because currently they're hitting the ceiling. Oh, it's actually not that clamp, it's this clamp. Okay, as we move up, there we go. Now they overshoot. That's what I was going for. That looks nice now. It'll look even nicer if we give this a little bit of an angle. Them going negative is not pretty, but them coming up should be good. Bup, 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 bup. Bup, 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 bup. Yeah, so that's working pretty nicely. We have a very controllable rig. Now, the volume is taking up a lot of calculation time for us. There's not much we can do about that. It's just relatively quick, so we're still getting good FPS here. But keep in mind, if you did have a more complex rig, that would be eating up more time. There's probably a lot of additional things we could do to make this happen as well. This is just the one I happened to put together in this particular instance. Abdo is mentioning the collision deformer, which I agree also could be a thing. I was thinking about that as a deformer. It could be nice. I want to stay in the realm of MoGraph here, but yes, that is definitely a potential thing I'd been thinking about, but did not go down that path. So, in regards to this as a... so that's pushing up the edge, and then they have the gold textured edges. we can make, first of all, this gets as sharp as we want to based on the number of iterations here. So the fewer iterations we have, the sharper that will be with the transition, in addition to the more segments we feed here. If I subdivide this more, those get sharper. So that you see now they are relatively sharp. The count of rotational segments on the cylinder is a variable here, so that will actually smooth those out a bit as well. I'm not going to go too far because I want this to be running relatively real time. But keep in mind those are variables here. And honestly, when it comes to the edges, there's two things you could potentially do depending on your setup. One would just be allow your third-party renderer to deal with it, and I might be able to put that together, although I have not touched Redshift in a bit of time, so forgive me. But we'll do that in a minute, because first I would like to do it with the vertex map. And let's see if we can get that working pretty well. Say, and I will just make that editable, create the vertex map. Oh man, we got really dense mesh, but we'll just have to see what we get. Create, no, selection, set vertex, weight to 0. Now we have a vertex map, very, very dense. This vertex map needs fields, don't freeze, and I want it to be fed by the same cloner. I want it to come in as a point object. And actually this is kind of helpful because this will view it as different things, and currently viewing the points of it. And points is actually kind of what I want here, because I don't want to see the entire surface. I just want the outline. I'm hoping we can do this just with the cylinder. The top cap does have a point in the center, and so we are getting a point in the center here. We're getting these little targets, and I can't think of a way of stopping the cylinder from doing that. Like, it's already, like, caps are a cap. If I turn off the cap, it's not a volume anymore. Also, we need the cylinder to stop right on the surface, which it is. Should we just ignore it? The alternative, the thing, and it's not a bad thing, would just be copying the cloner. And this one, what's the radius of the cylinder? Copy the radius, delete that. This will be fed an inside. 32, radius of 61. And that should be getting all the exact same modifications that we were getting from the same linear field, I believe. Yeah, you see those splines are also moving up. So when those splines are moved up, I want them to be right there on the surface. I don't know if they need to be up in the air or on the ground level. Let's assume the ground level for now. This will not see the cloner. It'll actually see this cloner as a spline object. I want to see not a curve, but actually not a long, but a radius. And now it just sees the radius of those. Excellent. So now you can see we get the radius of the circle. Now, actually, if we wanted that to be a little bit more inner as well, I might be able to scale down. Yeah, I can scale. Oh, perfect. Look, I can scale down that circle so the radius is a little bit smaller. And now it's a little bit smaller, which means as it transitions in, it's only there on the edge. And now we get those highlighted edges, which could be fed a separate texture. Visualize that by dragging in the material and put the color channel, feed it an effect, vertex map. This is the vertex map. And now you see that this texture is now getting applied. It's getting applied specifically to those upper corners. All that's still driven inside of this vertex map. So things like adding a random field, Perlin noise, scale it up and make something a little noisier like knocky. Yeah. That could multiply. And now you can see we start getting these messed up edges a bit. That could even get remapped to sharpen up. Curve, please. There you go. I can pull this up like that, and I can see that we can get like slightly more fractured edges if we want. This, of course, is limited to the resolution of the object. That could be, I mean, it's supposed to be scratchy. I'm not going to set up fancy materials right now, but let's just make that the glow, And this can be a more solid dark gray. And the corners will glow by multiplying gold color. We don't need the reflectance. So you can see that those are now getting shined up via the same fall off. So with any luck, as this master linear field transitions, we have to hit play to actually see the springiness. We can actually see those fade in and out because they're only getting affected as that transition comes in. And so you get a MoGraph driven version of this that way. Not to spend too much time on it, but let's try and do the 5-minute version of Redshift. So no more vertex map, which means that never need to be made editable, but no matter. And not to get fancy, let's delete that, create Redshift material, apply to the plane, Redshift light, area light, also tell me I don't render on stream very often, so please let me know if there's a burst of lag when I hit render. But we need to set up some let's just make sure it's working. Redshift render view. Man, I haven't used this in a bit. Is it IPR or the render view? I think it's render view. Yeah, okay, that's working fine. Don't render, please. Okay, so there's the basic thing. Redshift material. These are all of the different facets of everything coming in. So if I were to make a noise, I want a max on noise. That could be fed into the bump channel. Search for bump to make a bump map from the noise. This is the input. Output that to a overall bump. Okay, I do remember some things. So now we have a bump. I want something noisier, like Naki. There we go. We get this nice Naki going. Now we want this limited only to the corner. So we'll search for curvature. Drag that in. And I want to see this really blatantly, so I shall output this just as the surface. And you can immediately see that we are seeing these corners pretty well. And by modifying the contrast, the min, the max, and definitely this output range max, we can brighten that way up. It's really pixelated right now. I'm actually not sure what to do to get around that right now. But the thing I really like doing is feeding a noise through the radius, which should add a didn't really do much there. What do I need to do? I thought we would see that pretty blatantly. Clamp enable radius. Radius is the parameter, I thought. Let's just grab a regular noise just to see. I want to see exactly what this noise is doing. Yeah, that's fine. And then feed that into the radius. And does that give us any variation? Not much, but constant scale, coordinate, fractal. We might need to remap it. What? Remap? No. Range? Yeah. Change. We might be able to do a change range. Currently this is outputting like 0 to 1. Let's say it outputs 0 to 11. There we go. I think that's finally doing something. There we go. Yeah, so we just needed really big numbers. This original one would have worked, but we just needed the range to be really large. So by increasing this remapping, we can start like really modifying how this edge is getting affected. And that is the radius. Those can change like min and max. A lot of things that can modify there. So that's outputting to the surface. This is now looking like that. Searching for a layer. Grabbing a color layer. let's take this Maxon noise, which is really weird. It's not C4D noise, it's Maxon noise. That's the base color. I guess I want it to be on color 1, and then the base color can be something separate. And this is the mask of the base color. That gets output to the final surface. And yeah, so now that's multiplying, so that's now messy corners. So that can now be output as the bump. Actually, that gets input into the bump map. That is now the bump, which isn't perfect, but hopefully we can make a messed up edge. Yeah, so crank up the power there, and now you can see that this edge is starting to get messed up. I'm going to super exaggerate it just so you can see it on the stream. So now you get that messed up corner there, and that can be retextured via that same mask. This curvature can be fed into other channels. Do we have a gradient? Oh, I think it's a ramp. Yeah, I'm remembering things. Things are coming back to me. I would like to ramp out the curvature as an input, which then turns into the diffuse color. And let's see. Let's have let's get that dark gray going into a brighter gold color. Yeah, so it starts getting messed up there, which is looking all right. And of course, well, I mean, the roughness is a big variable here, feeding, copying this ramp again, grab that, reset to default. That can be fed into what I think is like one of the most important properties under reflection would be the roughness, like how rough is it being treated. And I think if I start pulling this in, yeah, what's happening is this is now really rough. The rough up edges are really rough, and the rest of it is shiny. If we start pulling the black color up just by minute amounts, we're going to start blurring. Let's see. Yeah, I'm now blurring this interior part, and then this outer part is determined how rough that is. So all of this now is the exact same idea as being driven through Redshift, but Redshift doesn't care about any of the curve, doesn't care about the vertex maps. It just cares about how sharp these angles are, and it determined that yes, that is a sharp angle, so that will be something that gets messed up. Now we did super exaggerate things like this bump. That could probably be pulled back significantly, mess that up to whatever smaller degree we want. Range map, clean things up. But yeah, there's a Redshift version on there. I suppose, because that went relatively well, I was more worried about that because I haven't touched Redshift in a bit. But let's just get a quick animation out from there. Let's see. Quick shading lines, please. Oh, yeah, okay, this is the angle. So you want there to be none. Coordinate key. I'm not even going to worry about like easing in or easing out. Time is 0. At the end, we'll have traveled all the way across. Keyframe. Actually, I will worry about it. Set that to linear. Set that keyframe to linear, so it's not easing in and easing out. Let's just check what we're going to get. Blum, 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 blum. Okay, that's perfectly fine. It's not going to be the craziest thing. Make sure that this angle isn't visual, complete visual nonsense from the light perspective. Not great lighting, but you know what? It'll work for now. Just so it goes quick, let's do a 560 by 560 Redshift, and honestly, I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm just going to leave everything default. We just want that to get spit out quickly so we can tackle at least one more question. All frames, save, go. And because it's Redshift, I think this will go pretty quick. Yep, frame, 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 frame. Taking a little bit of time to get, okay, I was just making sure that something is happening. I'm super glad I didn't ease in and ease out because that was taking a while to do something. It is pretty nice to see those like melt in. We could drive that with like a vertex map as well and different points. We could do fall offs and have. I would like to like have modified this with more noise. Right now it's very uniform. It would be nice to make it skinnier, but it's visually different than the reference, so I'm fine with that. How's lag? Any lag from rendering? It's a concern. I know when I've had guests on, because often guests are the ones doing more rendering than I am, and when the guest is communicating to me through Skype and they hit render, it's just like I lose all video feed from them. Oh, well, apparently people are saying it's good, so go computer, go. Okay, this is pretty much done. 2, 1, 0. Okay. Not terrible. I mean, it's not amazing, but considering how quickly we put that together, the effect is there. Nice. I might as well save that. Save as animation. Just save as an MP4. Save. Episode 1. Renders. Displacement bumps. Man, I've been messing up all the names. Save. Boom. Done. Close. Alrighty. Let's see. Almabrook. Apologies if I'm pronouncing that badly. Like, yes, I'm happy to be back. And I'll be back for, like I said, at least the next 30 weeks in a row. So you'll be sick of me before time is out. Ignacio, do you know if you create a new node material of redshift type, you can use native C4D modes? Oh yeah, if you are using the node space, if you're using the material node space in Cinema 4D, Redshift is fully integrated with that, and they made it so that the shaders are interactive in the viewport. So I guess I did pop open the Redshift material editor here because I'm currently used to this more. But hang on one second, I just accidentally minimized my windows. Never wiggle your mouse, it makes everything disappear. Bringing the chats back. Okay. Yeah, if you use the material node space, actually I haven't even done it, so let's just spend a second and see if we can get it to open at least. So that's all saved and ready. Create material, new node material. Double click on the node, which will pop open the node editor. How do we change our node space? Edit. Node preferences? No. Material node space. I know it's like it's a node space. I mean, it does say node space redshift, so maybe this is redshift already. Oh, and maybe I didn't even know that was a thing. So yeah, look, there's a node space up here. So you have physical, and then because I have Redshift installed, it's detecting Redshift. And this should have all of the same nodes, so I can search for like curvature. And now this should be identical, functionally identical, but it's built natively in the Cinema browser, or in the Cinema interface. And while I won't spend any time doing it, if I were to apply this, and I don't know if it'll work, but let's go back to the shading mode. Yeah, there we go. Look, now this is a Redshift material that we can see in the viewport. So it's a good idea to use this editor. And I should probably just start doing it so I get used to it. Because a really bad way to go about learning something is to be like, well, I know the other one better. It's like, well, if we just force ourselves to use it. My main thing here being is, well, it's a live stream and I don't want to be stumbling over things I don't have to be while there's a bunch of people participating. But if I just start opening this up, I know I almost search for all the nodes. So if I search for ramp, there's ramp. And we could have just built the entire material this way and then get used to it that way. And then we can see it in the viewport, which is just a good thing overall. So yeah, thanks for the reminder, Ignacio. I appreciate it. And I don't know if the other renderers, how integrated they are, but obviously Redshift is a part of the Maxon family now, so they made sure to fully integrate that. Type Ogre, it's maybe the last two versions. It might have been integrated in R22, but I'm not sure exactly. Yeah, I think R21 is when we first got nodes, the material nodes, and R22 it was there. And essentially, if the couple of key, it just goes to like if a couple of key, what's the right way to say it? Nobody popularized it, so everybody already had their existing workflow, so there was no reason to be like, oh, there's another new way. But we should start doing it the new way. Michelangelo was saying that we could have possibly increased the speed with a spherical field, which would be similar, but I don't think you can... Actually, it's not going to work, but as a purely experimental thing, I just want to see that there's no way this works. I don't think it is in a million years this would work, but it would be really cool if you could clone a fall off and if it worked. So I'm just setting up the displacement again to form point. Okay, so that's now pushing upward fall off. So if we said, hey, spherical fall off, then you get spherical fall off. But this is a single spherical fall off. And actually, I am thinking of additional ways that I could have done it. We could have done it with individual points and then done a fall off there. But it's going to be really cool if we could put a spherical, like put this into a cloner and get a bunch of these, and then in here feed the cloner. And you can see as I drag this in, it's like, oh, what is it being brought in as? And yeah, it's not, none of these are terribly useful. It is a spherical fall off, but it is possible that if we drag this in as the proper thing, if I say point, will point be seen? Maybe not. But, well, let me just show you, because it popped in my head. Because we're working with perfect circles, I'm pretty sure if I make a matrix object, drop this to 5x5, T for scale, drag this in. Can I say that that's a point object? Yes. Okay. So we drag in this matrix object as a point object, and you can now see that we're getting these individual points falling off. It's being a little weird. What is it doing? Why is it animating? There's nothing keyframed here, but every time I click, it's alternating. It is confused. Why would it be doing? Oh my goodness! I think this is such a simple setup. This has got to be a bug. That is not, well, the matrix is being buggy there. I won't worry about that right now. But we can do, let me simplify it even more. I'm going to set this plane is going to be set to 5x5. So you can see I got a 5x5 grid. And if I drag this in as a point object, now those individual points of this object are getting translated through. So same as a matrix, exact same concept. But we can go to remapping and go to curve. And now I could drag this in however I want to. And now you can see that these are perfect spherical calculations. So just by changing this fall off and grabbing this layer, this is the radius, so we can make these circles any sides we want. And look at this. Look at that. So now look how easily we are able to make that shape. And the best part about this is if it does work. Let's go a little more. If it does work, I should be able to just deform this geometry or even just move it. So if I move it away, you see that'll fade out. Actually, that spherical fall off there is a bit of a problem. That might be breaking what we wanted it to do. But I just wanted to point out if we modify this in some way, I guess ironically we need another plane deformer. This one will be pushing negative. And I don't want this. I want a linear field. So now if, is that not updating? Oh, that's not triggering a refresh. That doesn't trigger a refresh. We might need to, you know, it's really, no, even that doesn't, it's still seeing the original. It's not, this is seeing the original object, not its deformed state. But there's almost always a workaround. So just as a closing this out. We'll try a connect object on here. Connect. This plane should be deformed by that. It does see that. All right, nice. When in doubt, use a connect object. So you can see I can transition those in by deforming this bottom plane, putting the points in range of the secondary plane. And now those can transition in. And you see it's a very fast rig. And we could manipulate this in all sorts of different ways. And that could be neat. So yeah, a nice little add-on. Thanks for mentioning. Thank you, Adish. Appreciated. Okay, let me give that another save because that could be useful to someone. And if you're just joining us, any file I save here is available on Patreon. I usually post it on Friday. This is no longer Redshift, but it is displacing the bumps. Let's see. What video card? I think it's just a regular 1080 Ti, or two 1080 Ti's. So it's getting a little bit older, but it was still like really good when it was built. Travis, did I already answer a Travis question? I feel like I did. And somebody else is just asking bubble wrap. Oh, what's the reference to this? Bubble wrap? Yeah, I guess this could have been a bubble wrap reference. This is, I wonder, just for fun, I'm going to put a second one. If we duplicate the plane effector twice, then we get a doubling effect, which could possibly, yeah, it's going to give us a little bit more of an inflation look. Not quite as much as I would want, but yeah, those sort of inflate. And then combine that with perhaps a bit of smoothing. I love the smoothing. So we'll smooth this out. Not much. Just a bit of smoothing. Let's push this out less. And do the secondary one more. I really don't want to pushing up, but there's not much of a way to limit that. Let's try and get more bubbly. But it's still pretty good. Oh, I have two. So Dean knows better what hardware I'm running. I have two 2080s, not 1080s. I have posted it in the past. It's just not something I pay attention to. I had someone else build the computer for me. And I think that was that was Travis posting the link to the previous question. Oh, another thing to mention, if you do ask a question and I don't get to it, feel free to post the question again. And when you see me wrapping up a previous one, no, don't spam it. If you spam it, then I will not answer it and possibly you will get muted. But always feel free to repost it again later because the chat keeps moving forward and I can't always scroll way back to get the question. However, going up just a bit, Gumbo had a vacuum forming question, and we always get at least 2 of these per season, so we might as well get one of them out of the way. That's really cool looking. So I'll pull this into the proper screen. Thump, thump, thump. So this is some really nice proper vacuum forming. This seems to be on a industrial level. Because I've definitely watched some vacuum forming videos on YouTube from like indie makers, and theirs are not this complex. So what this is doing is there's a sheet of plastic. It is heated up, so it gets kind of droopy. But then what they're doing is they're inflating it with a bunch of air, so it turns into a balloon. And the object that's going to, they have what's, it might be called a blank. Like the blank is this mold that's underneath it, which is probably something pretty solid. Like this could be a wooden block that's carved into the shape of, in this case, like a suitcase. So the air blows up like a balloon, and then the object moves up, and then it sucks all the air out, and then it forms that shape. Now, what's kind of interesting about this particular one is that this feels a lot less like this specific effect makes me not want to do it with the traditional soft body way, but by doing an actual morph of some sort, because it's such a very specific model in the end. And it's really, it's like, it's the smoothing out of the crevices. I wonder, it's pretty neat. The specifics matter a lot here. Let's do some really quick modeling. So, new file, cube, select all, T for scale. I'm going to do this very quickly. T for scale, select the top point, E for move, pull down. Edge mode, UB, select around edge, MF for edge cut. Hit apply. That gives me an extra subdivision here. Do a loop selection. UL, D for extrude. Push out. Grab just, or hold down D as I do a loop selection here. Now I have the front and back. D for extrude. I for inner extrude. D for extrude. UL for loop. Do a loop selection. I for inner extrude. Turn on preserve groups. Go over 90 so I can actually pull this in more. I don't like the way it looks on the edge, so I'll do a loop selection there. And a loop selection there. I for inner extrude, pull those in. It's still getting, I don't want to get those edges messed up like that. I, D for extrude. And then let's get some extra details on the top. So UB, MF, set this to subdivisions of 20. Hit apply, get all these nice subdivisions. Go back to polygon mode, selection. Let's grab poly, poly, poly. I'm just alternating. Every other one to grab them. Deselect that one. I accidentally grabbed. D for extrude. D for extrude. I turned on UV mode. D for extrude. Let's pull those down. And yeah, that's not terrible. We can get a couple extra tabs going here, just for a little bit of extra detail. We'll grab 2, 2, 2, 2. I probably don't need to be being all clean and symmetrical, but this is just the way I like to model. D for extrude. And is there any additional lips or anything? Like, there's a lot we could keep on pushing on here. Like, I love, like, here's a shape I love doing. What's the best way to do this? If I do a, I can't think of a way of doing it quickly. So, but if I were just to select these, like so. I for inner extrude, and we pull those in. Oh, I. There, you can do that, and then D, and then you get these really nice notches. I really like doing that. And you can even go further. We hit I, do some more. I had to go careful. D, and you pull out. You get kind of like this little buckle-looking thing, which is a nice little, like, you get a lot of detail out of not a lot of work on that. Now, one of the problems with building a model like this, I mean, it's a cool techie-looking thing really quickly. And, you know, you can always go further and further. Oh, I guess that, this icon, I'm so tripped over by that polygon, this UV thing, because it looks too much like the polygon icon. But selecting all of this stuff, I for inner extrude, don't preserve groups, and we can pull those in. D, so yeah, it's just some fun, like, techie modeling, so you get these cool looking sci-fi things. I'll save that where it is, and let's see if we can use the remesher for a vacuum. How do you spell vacuum? Yeah, 2 U's. It's always like there's 2 letters, but it's 2 U's. Vacuum form. Okay. Yeah, it's really fun to put together that type of thing, but oh, there's no but. It's just fun. Now, we need to convert this into something that's very even in its mesh count, and I am curious if we can use the remesher for that. So if I use a remesh, and let's even, what happens if we increase the density? It doesn't really allow us to increase the density, but it is, keep outline. How can, see, it's trying to keep the shape, but it's not designed. It's funny because it's not it's not, oh, that helped, edge angle. Oh, there we go. It's not perfect, but, and we can't increase the poly count. It seems to be set. We can't go higher, but that is actually not terrible. Let's try to go even higher. Is that doing something? Oh, it does go higher. Haha. Okay, so now it's not going to be perfect, but this is giving us a very evened out mesh, and this is exactly what I wanted. So how high can we go? Because the technique we're doing, we just want a nice even poly count wherever we can get it. Okay, that is almost exactly what I want, so I'm quite pleased with that. So let's make a duplicate, make it editable. Oh, that's weird. It killed it. Why did it, when I made it editable, it disappeared? Oh, that one didn't. Okay, whatever. So there it is. So we get that nice mesh. I just learned something new about the remesher. It's actually a way of getting even polygons and increasing the poly count if that's what you want. So pretty cool. Now here's the first thing that's might be kind of neat about what I'm thinking is now that we get that very even poly count everywhere, the smoothing deformer might do some interesting things to this mesh for us. Yeah, look at that. So we could, it's kind of like we can drag, this is kind of like that last step of the plastic where it could be like, and then we suddenly get that nice sharp one in the end. We could get that transition going. So that is cool. And in addition to that, I would love, oh, thanks, Travis. Yeah, Travis is saying the reason why I made it editable and it didn't appear is it was calculating still because I had made a duplicate. It was recalculating from scratch, and I made it editable before I'd finished the calculations. I'm surprised it doesn't queue it, but that's good to know. Anyway, the stiffness is going to allow us to transition into a kind of blobbed out thing into a very blobbed out thing. There's a stiffness map. Actually, I've never used a stiffness map like that. Let me think. What I want to do is get essentially the curvature. I want to get a curvature map from this, but how do I get a curvature map into a... That'd be really cool. That'd be a cool thing to exist inside of the MoGraph tools for the vertex map to drag in like an occlusion setting. That'd be cool. I gotta suggest that. Quick, somebody go to Maxon and suggest in the their form to add an occlusion. Where would this live? Inside of these drop downs, we could have an occlusion, and it would be really good for vertex maps, where it's just looking at the polygons around it and if they should occlude or not. We don't have that right now, so how? What I would like to do is have certain areas fade out slower. We could do it manually. Let me maybe show you. I don't have a great way of doing this. And these, it's not going to be very good at finding edges because it's so organic now. It's going to be very inclined to go spinning around. So yeah, not the best. Andres is saying that you could do curvature with X particles. I mean, I do have X particles, but I don't think I can translate that into a cinema vertex map. And if you can, I don't know how to do it. Yeah, there's XP vertex map, which is like a completely separate thing, and I just have no experience with it. So I don't doubt you can do it. I just don't know how to do it. Plus, that is introducing a plugin. And then it just makes it so less people can follow along. I would love for a particular spot to be affected differently. And just as a example, I suppose, we've got here's the smoothing, and we could even smooth out more. Yeah, okay, so, oh man, yeah, this could work really well. So if we push that a bunch, we go to fall off, and we say, hey, I mean, how often do you put a fall off into a, oh, look at that, it's beautiful. We do a linear field here, and now it's going to be a little slow because of all the iterations, but you can look, I can transition between those shapes, which is amazing. That's really cool. So now that we've essentially, because I turned these all into quads, I guess there might be a few triangles, but because it's very even polygon count, it gave us the ability for the smoothing to get applied all over the place. So we can get this effect really easily just with a single smoothing deformer. And now that this is the way it is, I mean, potentially we could just keep on smoothing even more. Yeah, so you see as I smooth it even more, that's looking like this. Then feed a plane effector which actually does come after. Once again, it's going to be a deformer. So let's push out 50 to form the points. That's calculated after. So this entire overall shape inflates, which is fine. And then honestly, we will need another smoothing afterward because that's going to be a little bit rough. So after that happens, I can put this, and you can see that a few iterations will go a long way as far as calming those down. I should have turned on quads for our original subdivision because there are some triangles, and these little pinchy areas are going to be causing this extra detail. I'm just not going to worry about that. And actually, this whole thing could probably put in a volume after the fact. But let's just... I think we've got everything we need right here to get a basic version of this going. We could do the initial inflation. I'm not super worried about that part. I just want to get the transition from the inflated state to the final object. So for the most part, I think a lot of that just has to do with keyframing this effector. I'm going to make everything linear. Command D. Key interpolation. Linear. So the plane effector. Strength. And then after 30 frames, it'll be down to 0. Now, so you see that's going to transition us into that. Now, I'm just going to guess, but let's say about the halfway point, we could start pulling the strength down. Should we do strength? We could do strength, we could do stiffness, or we could start dropping iteration counts. Stiffness is going to be the most linear, so we'll do that. We probably would do want them easing in and easing out might be a good thing, but we start increasing that stiffness. And honestly, the other stiffness or the other smoothing needs to be doing a very similar thing. So let's say that that's 100%. I guess we don't want to go 100% because there's supposed to be like a little bit of curvature. No, we'll do 100%. We'll just put a subdivision surface on it. Stiffness back to 15. So that can be transitioning out at the same time. So just as a quick scrub, you can see we're in the inflated state. And now this can start pulling down and then taking on the shape of the overall object. And then that catches it. Now, the problems come in where, well, it's not so much a problem. We just need to plan this properly. We can't let it ever get smaller than the original object. It shouldn't ever get smaller. So it should start taking on the final form. Actually, that was pretty good. It's not perfect because you see right here, like these are smooth to the point where the shape has to be on the outside of it. But the rest of it's not bad. You see that the top part, like all of that, is working really nicely. I'm trying to think of the way I would go about doing that. I'm not sure. Another thing to throw out there is I would want to... It'd probably be a good idea to put this entire thing into a volume builder and then into a volume mesher. And we can now get another nice clean poly count. And that doesn't change anything except the final mesh will be a little cleaner. Oh, actually, I didn't even think about it. This could work. Let's put a second copy, but this one has no deformers on it. So now the original one is always there. So the volume builder can have smaller voxel size, a little more increased resolution. And you see right there where those corners are poking out, so we probably need to inflate a little bit more. I won't worry about those details. But now, as the keyframes begin going, yeah, you see those corners are kind of taking on the attributes, but it can't escape from it. And then, oh man, that looks great. Look at that. And now a good thing to do would be extra... the more resolution we can put on here, the better. So, you know, decreasing the voxel size, you know, so if you're going to do your final, like increasing that to 3, well, decreasing it to increase it to 3, you can see that's going to go a long way for sharpening this whole thing up, which is good. I would also probably put a smooth on there. So the smooth would be something you'd want to keyframe. This is going to really slow us down. Let's see. I want it to stay about that smooth probably until about here. So then we can keyframe that. And where does the rest of it? Yeah, the rest of it locks in pretty quick. So that's just kind of like the last. Actually, I guess it stops in 45. Here's something I can do. The keyframes, you see the keyframes aren't showing up in this timeline? Something that's really neat is there's actually, that's the smooth in there, but there is physical ones that we can add as well, which are right here. I want a SP or an SDF smooth, which I think I just make as a hierarchy child. And now it's this external object. And now it's really easy to keyframe that. And now you see it actually does appear here. And it's a separate living object and it's not in the hierarchy. I'm even going to give that 10 frames to transition down to 0 to become really sharp. Now, I expect it to be choking quite a bit, but as I scrub, and then boom, we get to our final object that gets all the detail in the end. And the smoothing, yeah, all that is working great, and we don't lose the original object. The only thing, once again, I don't want to lose, you don't want to lose your original object. So I might counter inflate that somehow. Yeah, actually, that's not hard to do. Inside of here, we'll move our original object down and then create another. Man, look at all these amazing tools we have in Cinema. So cool. So SDF smooth, does that just change modes? Yeah. Okay, so I need a second one right there. And if we just rearrange these, that might work. So that doesn't actually change anything, but internal to the volume builder, if our second one, which I should rename to expand, this is going to now be in mode dilate and erode, which just means make bigger and smaller. It's like an inflation. So if I say, hey, you're extra inflated, and then that inflation starts fading away at the same time the other one is, then now, yeah, that's going to counteract it having been sunk in. So it's kind of like right there. That's the one, that's what we're trying to fight against. So let's keep on increasing this to be bigger, bigger, bigger. Okay, quite a bit, apparently. Okay, 25, we're getting there. 35. Yeah, so we'll do that. Oh, yeah, I just got to be careful. Yeah, it's probably pretty inflated here now. I didn't realize we were in the last couple frames, so probably going overboard on that. Whoa, 15. So let's see how that looks on the last couple frames. So those are inflating and then get nice and sharp in the end. So you can see that we've got all the tools that we need to do this transition however we want to. There's a good chance we could do this entire thing just in the volume builder. But I think that little bit of inflation and smoothing we were doing is actually doing a really nice job of transitioning in. I think we'd want to, like everything, a couple different things are happening here at the same time. But that can end there. And then a little bit more of a transition between a couple of those effects. And then you end up with this final nice smoothed one, and that all comes from the blob. So that is pretty good overall. I am quite pleased with that as a vacuum forming concept. That's completely different than we've ever done, and it's working completely awesomely. Every other attempt we've ever done in the past using soft bodies has always been like a nightmare. You never get the detail. The mesh doesn't go where you want to. Now, doing this technique, we have every control we could want as far as inflating, smoothing, contracting, like just layering up this expanding, expanding it with a plane effector as a deformer. All of these tools become very, we just have a lot of control, artistically speaking, to be like, okay, let's mix it a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Oh, this part isn't quite doing what I want here, so I'll transition this in this way, and we get pretty much perfect transition. I also think, I'm not sure, but yeah, these, look at this, these expands and whatnot also have fields in it. So those could get fall offs. So this entire thing could be getting driven via, instead of me just keyframing them with sliders, there could also be like fall offs happening here. We could have some sort of weight map overall. So certain areas get affected first and other ones get affected later. Yeah, I guess just for the sake of it, I mean, that's saved right now. But now I'm not going to change any keyframes. But inside of, let's just create the fall off. So here is a linear field. And I want this to affect lots of things. I want this to affect the smoothing. I want to affect this smoothing, which it already is somehow. I must have had it selected when I created it. I want to affect this deformer. I want it to affect this smoothing. There we go. We're starting to see it take effect. And then we want to affect the expand. Well, the expanded looks a little bit weird, but maybe, well, yeah, that's fine. I'm not sure why it looks so weird, but okay, it's super. Apparently, this requires a lot of extra calculations. Actually, that's not too surprising because every single point in the voxel is needing to calculate. Just to speed ourselves up, I'll decrease our voxel size. So I've lost a lot of resolution there, but we'll get slightly better. Ooh, it's really choking on it. But now you can see I can just drag this fall off, and we can, with no keyframes, we can get this transitioning however we want from one shape to another. And of course, make multiple fall offs, put on some, I don't know if it's going too slow for us to test as well, but we could possibly add things like delay and springiness. So there could be some springiness to it. Not that the reference had any, but those are options that could layer up as well. It's interesting that the fall off takes so much longer to calculate. You see, I can scrub this reasonably well. But yeah, if every point is calculating inside of a fall off, then that definitely is a variable for making it chug a bit. Blurp, blurp. And like I said, the accuracy of this is going to be heavily dependent on the resolution we feed in. Look how much better it looks if we set that to 3. Then now suddenly that object really comes into focus. Where if we put this to about 10, like, yeah, it's going to run really quickly, but super chunky. But I am very, very pleased with that. As far as us being able to get a crazy shape of getting vacuum formed. Pretty much. I mean, it's the best version we have. See, that's why I'm never shy about re-tackling something again. When people ask for, when people ask a question that we've seen before, I am very happy to go and try and tackle it again, because you never know if the new tools we've gotten are going to change it. We suddenly come up with a new idea. We've been so blinded by doing vacuum form through like soft body, like taking the air out of a soft body, that we've never tried doing it just using a volume builder. And I bet we could have done a lot of the stuff with a volume builder like 3 years ago. And then on top of that, we are using, actually, I mean, we used the remesher. The remesher was really good for doing the smoothing part of it, but I feel like we could have done the entire thing with a volume builder. In fact, the volume builder would have done a good job of giving us even polygons as well. And they are all quads. So yeah, I think we could have done this several years ago and we just never thought about it. But it was really good question, and I'm glad we tackled again. Very pleased with that output. And who knows, maybe maybe that'll be this week's tutorial, that I try and make like the big proper version of it where I play with it some more. Andres is mentioning a jiggle deformer. A jiggle deformer, unfortunately, would not work once we use this volume mesher, because a jiggle can only work if the point count isn't changing, and the volume mesher is generating a completely new mesh every time something changes. So you could not do a jiggle with that. But like I said, there might be able to be some springiness inside of some of the deformers. I'm not sure though. So it'd be something to think about. There'd be more to explore, and I do agree. I like jiggliness in general, but when we look at the reference, and I will pull it back up again for a moment. If we look at the reference, I don't think that there's like much in the way of jiggle. Like, yeah, there's no jiggle here, but there is definitely. You see how like these center points. This is where I was saying if we spent some time and made a vertex map, we could have different parts fade out. You see that these corners get affected most quickly, and then this inner part is like the last one to get affected. So those big flat areas would get affected last, and there's several ways we could go about making that happen. We just didn't. We got the overall effect happening uniformly. And that's why I was saying if we had a curvature map, if we could automatically generate a curvature map, then we could have made a curvature map on these outer edges to be affected first. That was the idea there. So, yeah, we're pretty good on time here. Well, in that we've only gone over about 15 minutes. This was really fun. I've been missing doing the live streams. I'm glad everybody came and made it. Really important details for everybody who's hanging out here, especially everybody's like, oh, can you do this again? Go and follow on YouTube so you get an alert when I'm going live. Make sure I put this on the Slack channel, which is really important. So you can head over to rocketlasso.com and you can join the Slack channel. Just click on the community tab. I'll put that here in the notes. I will, let's see, community. So here's a link. Go on over here and you can join the Slack channel. And then in the Slack channel, join live. And I @ the channel every time I'm about to go live for this. Also, as I said, there is a Patreon. If you go and you join Patreon, then you can just join in the bonus live streams on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which is this kind of stuff, but we go deeper. Like, as an example, I really like this vacuum form thing, so maybe we'll explore that a bunch more tomorrow. But instead of trying to constantly move forward and I guess be as productive in as short amount of time as possible, I'll be spending more time and very meticulously being like, okay, A test, or like E, like here's A, here's B, here's A, here's B. What's the difference? How does it work? Like really try and get to understand it so I can make a tutorial from it. So that's what a live stream does. Also, all the scene files I saved will be on the Patreon, so just something to keep in mind. I'll be back again next Wednesday for this live stream on the same time, so 2 o'clock or 8 UTC, which is like universal time. So I'm just going to use that because it doesn't change as the year goes. Super fun. Like I said, I missed it. I'm glad everybody showed up. Get any links you find, anything you're thinking about, put it together, hold on to it, and I'll see you next week for those. Otherwise, I'll see you in the Slack channel, and I'll see you just around the internet. Everybody keep on making cool stuff. I'll see you next time. Oh, David is saying, are the streams on Patreon also archived? They are. If you're on Patreon, you can watch every one of the old streams. They are all there. I should organize those also on a super page so that they're all organized in one giant list. But yeah, every episode of those is recorded. There's 3 seasons of Off the Record, and only last year we started doing the tutorial stream as well. So all of that content does exist, and all the scene files from those as well. Go check out the new website. Lots of stuff there. All the archive tutorials are there as well. And there's more questions coming in. Sneak peek for the upcoming season. Plugins, projects in the pipeline, guests. Oh, I can mention some guest stuff. Well, there's some people who haven't super confirmed yet, but I'm sure they will be. You can expect to see EJ again, I'm sure. If we can get it scheduled properly, Nick Campbell will be joining as a guest this year on the stream. You'll see more Rick Barrett from Maxon, I am certain. We've already arranged one, in fact. More EJ, as I said. And Jonathan Winbrush is going to be a guest. We've already got 2 dates on the calendar for when he might be joining there. And I've got other people on the list to be talking to as well. Some that aren't confirmed, and I don't want to mention them if they're not going to be here, but there's definitely going to be some cool guests. The plan is going to be this week is just me, next week will be just me, and then I'll start doing every other week is a guest would be what I want. So like one regular episode and then a guest episode. So I think that's a good way of linking those. Oh yeah, Gavin was great too. I had a lot of fun having Gavin on the stream. We made the dancing elephant. Joel, that is a definite possibility. I actually have a message out to him. We've talked about it. It's a scheduling thing that makes it tricky. Yeah, there's and then other guests that I've got lined up or would love to have on the stream, and it's worked. It always worked well in the past, so that would be good. Yes, they're streamed. I forgot to use Recall. Yeah, I did not use Recall. I gotta start pimping out our own tools more often. I can't talk about plugins quite yet. I hope to get a beta going, and I often grab like active people in the community on the Slack channel to be beta testers. Like, very limited number of people, but getting some beta testers for a very specific tool that we are getting closer to wrapping up. MD Berlin, how about Unreal? I've tinkered in it. I've opened it. I started programming in it right away, where I should have really been trying to just do a workflow between Cinema and it. But that'll be a good topic for when Jonathan Winbrush is here, because he's like an expert in that. He's like the leading person for putting that stuff together. So that's something that I will be keeping in mind. Yeah. It would be really fun. I would love to get, I haven't talked to him, but it'd be great to get Bob Walmsley on here to do like an X Particle episode. That'd be cool. Justin asking, what are my favorite shows these days? When you say shows, do you mean like TV shows? There's or would it be like streams and whatnot? Because I don't really watch much in the way of streams. There's a couple. Yeah, okay, TV shows, I'm assuming is what you mean. Well, I guess as an answer to that, we have been working our way through, me and my brothers have been working our way through WandaVision as they come out. Mandalorian is fine as well. As older stuff, we actually, Expanse, here's my big recommendation. If you haven't already been watching The Expanse, a season just wrapped up. They just wrapped up season 6, I believe. Maybe it was 5 or 6. It's the best show. It's one of the best shows that's ever been made. I love it. It's sci-fi. It's super realistic, super grounded. It's really good. Expanse is so good. And then when me and my brothers have like quiet days and we've been watching our way through Farscape from back in the day. And we've been watching for the first time ever through Adventure Time, which is crazy awesome. I did not know Adventure Time was so good. It's nice short episodes and they're very entertaining. And a lot more adult than I thought they were. So really good. Yeah, I'm planning on reading the Expanse books after I finished the show. I like watching it and then reading it so you get more details, but that's just me. But yeah, that's some stuff I've been watching over the last, some months. But it's all good stuff. Anyway, I had it all wrapped up and we snuck a couple questions back in there again. I will see everybody next Wednesday for another at least 2 hours of live stream. I'll see the Patreon people tomorrow for the bonus stream. And that should wrap this up. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll see you on the Slack. See you next week. And goodbye.